Guys, we are back here together. But as you can see, it's not just Pam and I.
No, we have a special guest today.
We do. I don't know who this guest is. I don't know where he came from, but the cat dragged him off the street.
I don't even know who I am or why I'm here.
Maybe I should
I'm
give
just
the
kidding.
intro something a little more flattering. Alan is a talented musician, a successful businessman, a loving father and husband, and he's joining us today.
Yes, he is joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You guys are going to have to bear with us today. I think I'm going to be more giggly
You got like the nervous giggles.
than normal. But welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome to the sunny side. We are glad you're here. Again, thank you so much for your support. And yeah, the continued DMs.
Yes.
Continued messages. Yeah, I think it's just really encouraging to see so many people, right? And just, hey, everything that you're doing is so like impactful or encouraging.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we love sharing stories. We're kind of
Yes.
getting into that. We have we interviewed our first guest last week, and now, Alan, you are our second guest, which maybe you should have been our first guest. I think we missed that
true. We missed that
opportunity.
mark,
We're sorry. But we have Alan here today. Alan has an amazing story as well, his own personal journey of things that you experienced before meeting Leah, and then, of course, the life-changing moment where you met Leah.
Brian walked into your
Oh my
room.
gosh, it came in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Just like the song.
Wrecking ball.
That was our theme song, right?
It's true.
Yeah, it was when you came down to the aisle.
Yes,
Leah just came down the aisle to that
It's true.
song.
I should have. That would have
I
been
know.
smart.
Or we
Vow
could have had
renewal.
you swing in on a wrecking ball into the ceremony.
That's true. That would have been smart.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Ben,
But here he is.
Yes.
thank you both for having me.
Oh, you're
It's
welcome.
a privilege.
Yeah. We're
Kind of
excited.
And
you kind of had to come because, well, you're
well,
married to me.
sort of, yeah, I guess
had no
so.
choice.
There's an obligation there.
But you were
So-
also dying to come too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
It was on your bucket list item, crossed
Yeah.
off.
He was like,
on the
I would
Sunny
love
Side
to
Up.
be on the Sunny Side Up podcast.
It is. It was like on my list of bucket list. I can't even talk today. Bucket
okay.
list items.
Yeah. And you're our
Absolutely.
first male guest, so maybe
Oh,
you'll
yes.
appeal to the male crowd because
Okay.
we don't have much male crowd at this
It's
point.
true.
So, any guys, if you're watching, hit that like button, hit subscribe,
Oh,
You tell
follow.
them.
You got to do it,
Yes,
Thank you, Alan.
and tell other men.
Yes.
You can tell he's in sales.
Yeah, that's right. This is the advice we need
Yeah.
right here.
We need
to
it,
grow
Alan.
this
We need
podcast.
it.
But okay, but Alan, all joking aside, you've had a pretty remarkable life up to this point. You've had a lot of opportunities for God. Just kidding. I feel like we need to have like a little hood we can put on her
Yeah,
and then
I
like
think
take
we
it
need
off
to-
when she's like in control
we
again.
do.
Put her in the
Okay.
other room
Okay.
and then bring her back.
You're gonna be with Parker. This will just be an empty chair in a minute. We're gonna be like, oh, yeah, you got
Maybe I
it.
should like pop in every once in a while.
Remember, dead puppies.
Dead puppies.
That's what we used to say when we first met
yeah, it's true.
to help her to stop laughing.
True, you did.
Dead puppies.
Because I laugh at inappropriate times,
Yeah.
like, you know, that first couple episodes when we were talking about that. And so, yeah, he would just look at me and go, Leah, you've got to pull it together here. Dead puppies, dead puppies.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
look at that,
so-
that teamwork, that support.
look at that. Now you're not laughing. You're borderline crying.
Okay.
Okay. So, Alan, we would love to know a little bit about you, about just sort of your life. You obviously were married, you have kids, you've now found this beautiful gem of a woman. And you,
I like
you guys
that.
have a
Beautiful gem.
new
she's
life.
a
You've
handful.
you've moved closer, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
So when did you first get married? How old were you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I went to Bible college and met my first wife
Okay.
at Bible college.
Okay.
And the rumor was sort of like Newfoundlanders, because she's from Newfoundland.
Okay.
They meet, get engaged, and get married in 2 weeks. That didn't happen that quick for us.
Right.
I'd say that was pretty quick.
So
And was that here or you were in Newfoundland?
that was in Peterborough.
Okay, Peterborough.
At
Okay.
the time, the college was called Eastern Pentecostal Bible College,
Okay.
and I think it's still called Master's College and Seminary.
Okay.
I should know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so got married at 21.
Okay, so that's
So
young still.
really-
Yeah, that's really
That's
young.
very young.
Yeah.
Younger
Really
than you
young.
and
Yeah, and she was older
Okay.
as well.
Sorry,
Five and a
how
half
much
years.
older?
5.5 years older.
Interesting.
Literally, there's a 16-year gap, I think, between Leah
yeah.
and
Oh
my
yeah,
ex.
we
We already high-fived
talked
on that
about
one.
this in a past episode. We've established that.
So I'm just adding that piece
So then
to
this
segue
is for
the
you,
two
Alan. I
episodes
gave you an
together.
air high five in that last episode. It was
Oh.
because I was so excited for you.
Yeah,
I think good job.
You know.
Good
You know?
job.
Yeah. So, and it's going good.
Yeah.
We're-
And so you had aspirations to be a pastor originally. Is that why you were in Bible college?
So at the time, I was pursuing full-time pastoral ministry and was going to do the full 4-year pastoral degree. And so met my ex there, and we started dating, and then I ended up developing an anxiety and panic disorder later in my first year, where literally I was in an exam, and my whole left side went numb. I couldn't see, had massive pain. It was really stroke-like. So it was sort of anxiety and migraine manifesting itself. So afterwards, it was the doctors who shared, like, you've got a panic and anxiety disorder. But it was so debilitating. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't even read properly for weeks.
They did CT scans. Like
They did a CAT scan to see what was going on. And there were a couple of people that really helped me in that journey. A guy named Phil, a fellow student who also had gone through that kind of journey, like panic attacks, anxiety, and one of the professors. And the professor gave me a book called Worry-Free Living by 2 medical doctors and a pastor. And reading that and understanding what anxiety is really helped me to... I guess it helped the anxiety to dissipate to some degree, because I'd never had something like this. Now, growing up as a kid, I used to get like these horrible stomach pains. And then when I was speaking with the doctors and certain counselors about that anxiety, they said that was probably the early signs of the anxiety manifesting itself. So stomach pains. And then at Bible college, I turned 20, and all of a sudden this massive anxiety. But what I
They
learned...
say that age is the age that it often comes
And can
about.
it be triggered with like high pressure situations, like school exams, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and actually it was around exam. It was actually, I was in an exam.
Right, okay, interesting.
when it hit. And so that was pretty major. But also what was new to me is a serious relationship, because throughout high school, it was more like hand holding, going on dates, nothing very serious.
Yeah.
Alan didn't really have a wild past. He was kind of like...
Alan was like
You know,
were
he
you watching Little House
Air
on the Prairie
5,
too?
Yeah. We'd have to invent a testimony, like, like go out and
he was
do
a
drugs
goody-goody.
and all the other stuff. But no, I didn't have much of a crazy past. I gave my heart to the Lord at 7. I rededicated my life to Jesus at age 14 at a youth retreat.
And then he went away on a French exchange.
Oh.
And am I allowed to tell this story?
Yeah.
To France?
Yep, he went on a French exchange. He went on a French exchange.
And learned how to French kiss?
This was when I was 16.
He was 16.
Okay.
So I was already serving Jesus faithfully.
He was living in...
it was an exchange, so I was living at a family's home.
And the daughter pretty much came down.
Not a daughter. It was a fellow Canadian, 16-year-old on the trip.
Okay.
Came down and opened the door to his room and pretty much got on top of him and tried to take her shirt off.
Well, that's it.
Alan's like, hold on.
No,
I didn't know we were going there.
This is the gist. But I walked in the room to go to bed, and she was already in the bed. And she was ready. I'll put it that way. So, but
he said, "Get behind me, Satan."
I said, "Get the hell out of my bed." And
like, what 16-year-old boy has the willpower?
I mean, obviously, it was a temptation, but
and that's where the anxiety started.
Yeah.
no, it could have been.
Stomach pain started right then.
But
my stomach.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
So that was the French exchange. Wow. But I would say, God, I would say, kept me from a lot of stuff. And so at the end of that Bible college year, so I finished the first year, I was able to get that done at least. We talked about marriage and what that would look like and when are we going to get married. It was one of her sisters. She was the youngest of 6. I'm the oldest of 4. And which is an interesting dynamic too. And one of her sisters said, "Hey, so when when are you going to get engaged? And so
Do you feel like because she was older than you, like she maybe was thinking more that way, maybe even quicker than you would have? Like, did you feel 100%. A little of the pressure to kind of catch up to her in that way?
My dad, actually, he was pretty against the idea, and he was against her too. He was like, I think that, she probably just wants to get married quick, and, she doesn't want to be left on the shelf. He said some pretty harsh things. And I said, Dad,
okay.
I
at 25, 26, right? She's already expired in your dad's mind.
And then 3 months later, we got married.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a very quick engagement. We got married.
Yeah. So you weren't even dating a full year by the time you got married then?
Actually, it was... So we started dating, and this is going to age me, but in February 1996.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I was 11.
Yeah. And then actually
I was playing with Barbie dolls.
I love it.
She was.
Well, he was getting married.
I know, that's crazy.
That's crazy, but
yeah.
I love it. It's so funny.
But, it was bliss, like most, honeymoons and beginning a marriage and, building this great life together. And then we talked about having kids, and then we had our first. And
did you have your first pretty quickly after you had gotten married, or did you wait a while?
So Tevin was born in 2000. So I guess it was about maybe 2.5. Yeah.
So not like very
quick. Not like honeymoon baby or anything.
Yeah, so we had the time to get to know each other, date as a married couple, hang out with other friends. And obviously the dynamic of Tevin coming along, that was a change.
Yeah.
And so we both had to adjust to that.
Kids will do that.
And you're still young then. You're still like 23, 24.
I was 23.
But like, when did you feel the cracks starting to, where was the point where you were concerned? You're like, ooh, I wonder if this marriage, the family, if we're getting into some trouble.
Yeah, well, I'd say probably early on too with the adjustments with the kids, because early on I felt like I think she's putting all her attention on the kids, which happens a lot, right? And not to diagnose her, but I think there might have been some postpartum as well.
Yeah.
And then my own issues, right? We bring issues into a marriage. I had anger issues. I had other issues that I had to work through, and just the anxiety disorder reared its ugly head
because that
in
doesn't
different
just
ways.
go away. Yeah.
No, I mean, I learned to manage the anxiety in different ways and in different circumstances, but it would surprise me when it came up again and again in a different thing, and it made me feel like I wasn't normal, right? And so into the marriage and having kids, having that anxiety rear its ugly head, it definitely, I would say, contributed to maybe her questioning at times, like, what are we doing here? I sort of pushed things down in terms of, okay, maybe we're fine. I had my stuff, she had her stuff that she was dealing with, and maybe had we had the chance to really talk about it, maybe we would have been able to resolve like, okay, this disconnect,
right?
Because it did feel like there was a distance, but yet we did a lot of things together.
Right. But you're kind of like going through the motions and not really connecting.
And Band-Aid solutions and everything from intimacy, like whatever it was. It was just like, I guess this is it. This is how it works. And we entertained. We had people over all the time. So I think there was a lot of distractions. Really.
Yeah. I bet a lot of people do that in marriages. Yeah. You just busy yourself with other things that bring you joy instead of the joy of your relationship.
Yeah. There was a lot of distractions, right? That really caused maybe a barrier to really having one-on-one. Now, did she have the capacity to? Did I have the capacity to at different points? I would say when, I guess it was when getting back to your question. So those were some of the cracks, for sure. And at the church we were going to at the time, this would have been in 2008, early 2008. I was at a prayer meeting. I was on staff part-time doing worship and and other things at the church. The pastor said, "You're about to go through one of the hardest seasons of your life." He's very prophetic.
He said that to you personally?
Yeah. And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate it."
That's ominous.
So, and this pastor said, not only are you going to go through one of the most hellish seasons of your life, but God is going to be ripping out fears in you that you don't even know you have.
Oof.
And a couple of months after that word that the pastor gave me, my ex said, "I don't want to be married anymore. Wow. I'm done. Maybe you should go with so-and-so on the worship team. I think you'd be better suited for her." So
she's done it. She's trying to matchmake
she
you,
was
right?
already trying to matchmake.
I'll feel better if I just pick a new person for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
And that was hard to hear. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And she said that after I was away doing a ministry weekend, and I was so looking forward to coming back to my family. I felt like God gave me a fresh vision for the family. And there was a lot of more self-reflection.
So you were really shocked. You did not see that coming.
Not at all. It was a late Sunday night, and we were sitting on the couch, and she just said, "Yeah, I'm done. I don't want to be married anymore. Maybe you should go with so-and-so on the worship team." And we got individual counseling. We had counseling together. And it seemed like things would maybe improve. She would say, "My heart is warming up to you."
Okay.
Right? And then, but then she would say, "If you take me to the Bahamas, maybe it will warm up.
Get really warm.
More."
Yeah, I feel the same. If anyone takes me to the Bahamas,
If
my heart will warm.
we will have really warm hearts if you want to donate a trip to us.
So
Was she joking?
I fell for at the time, I think it was I didn't know, but I think it was manipulation.
Maybe.
Maybe she was being genuine. I don't even know. I don't even know if she fully knew what she wanted or didn't want at that time, but we were on a journey. And so I'm like, I'll do anything.
Yeah. On a journey, first class.
Went to Bahamas,
Okay.
and now we weren't intimate at all. So basically, that's important.
No, that is. Because that's unusual. That's a red flag. If you're going to the Bahamas and then
not even that. It was even before that.
Right.
It's funny. The pastor said, the pastoral counselor, because she said, "Do I still have to sleep with him?" And he looked at her. "No, you don't have to." But then he was going to try to encourage something healthy, and she said, "Oh, okay." and then that was it.
Oh, wow.
Forever. Yeah, 7 years.
What?
So that's a whole. And I could.
That's so sad. So then when you came along, Alan was like,
that's the next episode.
My reward.
Anyway, I feel like I'm laughing to the point of turning red now.
That's okay.
Maybe,
Okay.
So, no, but she sort of really backed off. But yet I was like, okay, that hurts because I still love you.
Yeah.
I still want to make this work. Yeah. And in the middle of that pain, I do need to mention this. One of the ways that God showed me that he is with me and for me was something absolutely supernatural. So I'm on a business trip in April of 2008. So just a couple of weeks after my ex said, "I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore." So really fresh. And I was in Florida on this business trip, and I'm seeing these families all together. So it hurts me more. I'm like, it's so fresh. And this is what I want for my family. And I'm hardly able to function to do my job. And I was rooming with my CEO and VP, and they're Christians, amazing men of God, entrepreneurs, and super encouraging. They were amazing through the journey as well. But I open up my laptop and I see this email in my personal email from this guy, a pastor named Wes Merlang. And the short of it is, he said, "You don't know me. You might think this is crazy. This is not how I operate often. But my wife and I were praying, and God put your name, Alan Froese, in my wife and my prayer time.
Wow.
And I just want to let you know that we've had 20 intercessors praying for you and your family. We've been praying for you." And I just broke. And as I read this, just saying, okay, God, like, what is this? And how did he get my name? And he just, just shared some things that only God knew that I was going through on the other end of the country, in British Columbia, where my dad grew up.
Crazy.
And long story short, this Pastor Wes and I talked a lot, and he opened up just about how this happened. He said, we had this vision of you as a Canadian cyclist. We weren't sure if you were a cyclist, and you had sandy blonde hair. And so we knew you were Canadian, and we found you on the internet, through my website, and got a hold of you like that. And so we became
Wild.
very close through that. And he would pray with me and call fire down from heaven and pray for my marriage. And I opened up to him, obviously, about, do you know what's going on here?
Wow.
And there'd be other times where he'd write me and say, God saw what you did there in the car. Like, I was so mad, I punched the steering wheel.
No. What? You're
like the guys.
God's got like a
but
spy
it
on
wasn't
you.
like negative. Like,
Right.
it was like, he had a word for it. It's eluding me, but that thing, like, don't worry about it. God's with you. But the word that he had said in that initial email was guard your heart. And that scripture kept me out of so much trouble during that journey, because so many situations I had to guard my heart. So I just felt so loved by God. I already felt loved by God, but I was obviously questioning, God, where the heck are you?
Right.
Is this the kind of legacy you want for my family? Can you help us? I'm going to work on me. So it started that inward journey, and God ripping out fears, God helping me to guard my heart. And I told my dad, who was pretty much a very strict kind of guy, didn't believe so much in the supernatural side of the faith. He did and he didn't. Like, he was skeptical. I said, Dad, this guy, Wes, wrote me and told me all these things, and has been praying for my ex and I and our kids and our family, and gave me a word. And he said, and this is over the phone, that man heard from God. I want to meet him.
Wow.
And, I don't want to cry. But my dad had been very hard for years, dealing with anger issues, dealing with all kinds of things. And, was more of a duty Christian. He definitely believed. But when he said, okay, I want to go meet him, I thought, that's cool. So he ended up going, he was in BC anyway, and met Wes in Vernon, British Columbia. They talked, they hung out. Wes calls me after they meet, and he said, Alan, I believe the Lord not only told us about you for you and your journey, but for your dad. Your dad opened up. He was crying and opening up about his life. So my dad, he had a lot of hurts and pains.
Yeah.
His first wife left him when they were honeymooning in Europe. Wow. So you can imagine that the hurts there. And then he meets my mom, and I was conceived out of wedlock, and he married because of duty, the Christian duty. Well, I better do the right thing here. And so even in their dynamic, they struggled too, They separated 6 times. My mom never felt maybe fully loved, but my dad did love her, but didn't know how to show it.
Right.
She loved him, didn't know how to show it. It was pretty messed up.
Yeah.
It was pretty unstable.
Yeah, so you see that, like, family,
Right? But how God used that situation, used Wes, spoke to my dad. He breaks down. Wes is telling me, I'm breaking down. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And what's really amazing about that is that my dad was able to get a lot of his stuff out and have maybe some healing prior to his death of cancer in 2009. So lots of layers. So journeying through trying to save my marriage. Then in 2009, my dad, or 2000, was it? Yeah, it was early 2009. My dad gets diagnosed with metastasized melanoma. And 5 weeks from diagnosis to death, he gets diagnosed on April 1st, April Fool's Day, to May 7th, I believe. He passes away. Very quick. Yes. But during that period, my ex was supportive through it. And I thought maybe her heart was warming up. And I'll get to that piece after sharing a little bit about that journey with my dad. But he opened up. We got to say what we wanted to. Sadly, he passes away. And then, my ex, was more soft towards me in our marriage, it seemed like. But then later on, she said, maybe I was just, really trying to support you, and I just don't want to be married to you. That kind of thing.
So she would kind of go back and
go close
and then pull back.
Yeah.
That's so hard.
It left me in a position where I'm like, I don't even know what to believe.
Right.
Does she
is this
want to
getting
work
better
on it?
or is this not?
Does she not want to work? So I kept fighting for it. Yeah. And so, we got 4 kids. We got a family, I'm going to fight for her. I'm going to fight for the kids. I want to keep this together. I don't want the legacy to be like a broken family, right? And my dad always had this dream for like getting some kind of property, large property. And so when my ex and I were talking about, our existing house and maybe something we might want to do, we started looking at larger properties in the North Country, so short of it, we bought an acre and a half. I got the John Deere tractor.
So that must have been a sign for you, like she's having a conversation about this new property that we would live in together. Like that must seem like,
which is
okay, her heart must be, and even if she's having trouble showing it, deep down, she must be committed.
So we're doing all these things. And again, I think you're looking back.
At this point, it's going through the motions.
Going through the motions and distractions and things like that. And so, I thought, well, getting this place is sort of like in memory of my dad. And my ex thought, yeah, that's cool. And we were there maybe not too long before I started to discover, more about her, I would say, emotional affairs and things like that. So emails would be left open. The tablet, BlackBerry playbook at the time. People would be like, what the heck is that? It was a big thing when it came.
Like multiple emotional affairs? Is it one person?
Well, it was, multiple that I had found out about. And
so you're opening
there was one actually at the previous house too, I forgot to mention, but
okay.
Yeah,
so you're opening an email and what you're reading is not something that 2 people who are not in a relationship should be conversing that way.
No, it was like expressing their feelings for each other, like that.
And are these people you knew or no? Like, did you know the other people on the other end of them?
Not all of them. No.
Okay.
One of the guys worked at Starbucks, and actually this one sort of happened when we still lived in Markham before moving to Port Perry, and so what was interesting, actually, so I found out about, I won't use it, call him Jim.
Yes, okay.
So Jim.
We like fake names around.
Yeah,
so Jim went to the same Bible college at the same time my ex went, and they knew each other. And anyway, him and his relationship, they had split, and somehow my ex and him were communicating, and she found herself attracted to him, and even going to the Starbucks where he worked as a barista part-time, I guess, while he was doing some other kind of
all the big no-nos.
Right?
Yeah.
And I found out about it through looking at, I think, the 407 bill, which is a toll highway.
Right.
I was like, why are all these trips to that specific? There is a Starbucks closer to where we live.
Yeah.
So,
Wild.
and so, and then she opened up. Yeah, there's this guy, and you should meet him. He's really cool. We went. I did. I met him.
Wait, what? Hold on a second. So does she admit to you?
No,
like, is it like there's
no
this guy I'm
attraction
in
at this
love
point.
with?
Yeah.
You
No
should
attraction
meet him?
at
No,
this point.
she's trying to
And
make
you
it like,
haven't seen emails at this point.
No, yeah. So I'm backtracking.
okay.
Sorry,
Whew.
timeline. But
I got a stomach there for a second. I was like, this is taking a weird turn.
Yeah. So
Alan's
gonna meet the boys. Yeah. Okay.
So the short of it, yeah. So basically, that. You got to meet this guy. He's gone through some things, and maybe he can help you too in some way. And so I went to Starbucks and met him. Okay, seems like a nice guy, but I felt like something was up because of the way they were looking at each other.
Well, and as if he wants to see you walk in, and he's probably like, what?
But I think at this point,
wow,
my ex was saying to him, you got to meet my husband, and
Like trying to make it
Like,
seem like it's on the up and up, but really
maybe,
there's like a seed of weirdness under it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't even know fully at that
weird.
point. It was a bit confusing, but it was later on seeing all those 407 bills and what the heck is going on,
Right.
and then I find out
Starbucks
that
is expensive enough. You
It
can't
is.
be tacking on that 407
Yeah,
for every
you know,
drink.
it's
that she's traveling, meeting with him a lot there,
Wow.
and I called her out on it. We had a conversation. Yeah, I find him attractive. Blah blah blah, and so I was like, crap. And then another business trip. I'm on my way back home. I forget the book what I was reading. It was all about forgiveness and things like that. But I felt when I get home, I'm driving to that Starbucks to see if he's there, if Jim's there, and I'm gonna just talk to him. So I did. I drove there.
Like a stay away from my wife kind of talk?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
So
good for
I
you.
went to the Starbucks.
Like off the airplane to the Starbucks.
I like right there. I was
Okay.
like, I'm not even coming home.
Good.
And,
Good job.
And so went and he saw me. It looked a little off. I said, Jim, can we talk afterwards? And I prayed before. I didn't want to come on like guns a-blazing. And then
I would have gone on guns
on his
a-blazing.
break, he came out and we talked. I said, listen, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm still fighting for this marriage. And he said, yeah, I honestly, I don't want to get in the way with that. Like, I don't. And I said, tell me your story. So he opened up. And then I was like, okay, he's not as much of a threat as I
Oh my
thought.
goodness, Alan is so kind.
He's too nice.
But-
He's too nice.
But you can't, you know,
Send me in. I got your
but you
back.
still never know,
wish I
right?
would've known.
Right, yeah.
And then our oldest son gets epilepsy
Oh, wow.
and nearly dies.
Wow.
Like it just sudden onset. Like 2 years previous, he gets these night terrors, which we're trying to navigate through. But then all of a sudden, full blown epilepsy, which later on.
And how old was he at this time?
He was 12, and he fell in gym class and had a seizure, and it wasn't fully major at that point, but we went to a pediatrician who then said, well, if it happens again, just take out your video camera and video him.
Like, how do we do that?
So he has a full blown seizure and is foaming at the mouth in the bathrooms, you know, in our second story of the house. And I'm supposed to sit there and watch him and video. So I did, but I was terrified. I thought, what the heck's going on? And so this led us to having to rush him to Sick Kids Hospital, where he was ultimately diagnosed with focal epilepsy after many tests. But if they didn't get these seizures under control, they were grand mal and complex, he could have died, they said.
Wow.
And so here, add another layer of stress to what we're dealing with.
Because she's still saying she wants to leave you at this point.
Off and on. Sometimes, you know, hey, let's work on it. But it was like this.
But now your son's in the hospital.
Yeah, and in the middle of all that, she got very stressed out. I'm more stressed out, and really in that journey, it added more pressure. And she's like, I don't want to be married, you know, and so okay, well, let's just focus on our son. And he ultimately had to have, we didn't have to, but it was a recommended brain surgery where he had. They've been doing this brain surgery for about 18 years. And what they do is they resect, they don't do that right away. They take a piece of the skull off, put a grid of electrodes on the brain directly, a subdural EEG, because he had all these other tests, and they mapped his brain fully and could see the epicenter, the general area where these seizures are originating from. And then they did that with him, and then for 5 days they had that part closed up. They had a bandage like around his head and this tube with fluids coming out, and they're just watching
That's
and monitoring,
wild.
getting
Wow.
more data. And at the end of the 5 days, they were like, we have a very clear map of the brain now, and we believe we can operate safely. But here are some of the risks. You know, he could still have, you know, this or that complication. And Tevin was very brave. He was like, I want to get the surgery. So even before the subdural EEG, he was like, I want this. So he got the surgery. They resected a pea-size part of his frontal left lobe, and then later did a pathology on it. And they had theorized that the neurons they were probably malformed in utero, and they determined from the pathology report that they were. So at least we understood what caused them. Right. But then the meds, will he ever get off again? So the idea with that surgery is that now they cannot get all of the blood cell or brain cells out. And so what they would do is gradually wean him off the meds and then see if the seizures stop. So they did that process. Some kids, they never seize again. In his case, sadly, they did. And he was at Holland Bloorview Hospital doing rehab because his right side became weak. He didn't have feeling in his right foot. So he was completely fine physically before that. So it was like, dang, he had the surgery and now he's got this limp, so there was the stress of that. Did we make the right decision? Right. I guess we didn't know what to do. This was all new to us, but another layer of pressure, another layer of stress. Right. And then, I think it was there's a bit of timeline, like going back, another full-blown sort of emotional affair came out. I read what was going on between my ex and this guy who was a friend of mine. And no, I wouldn't say we were really close, but we grew up in the same youth group. And
like you knew each other.
Yeah, we knew each other. And that was tough. And he came to try to, before I found out about this, try to say, hey, I want to help be a champion of your marriage. And meanwhile, gathering that information and using it to get closer to my ex. So, yeah.
And this is while your son is enduring all of this.
This
all
was
encompassed.
It was all within the same 2-year period, kind of thing. And so that was really tough as well to deal with. And for me, I had to go through just a lot of more prayer and forgiveness. I'd already forgiven my ex.
So you're at these, like the Starbucks guy, you forgive it. This guy, you see it, you forgive it.
It took a while.
Yeah. But you're saying, but I'm even like, you're like, we're still going to work on this. You're not like, this is it. I'm done now because you're.
Exactly. I still was like, I want to fight for this marriage. And I told the other guy, I said, I still love her and I'm still fighting for this marriage.
Yeah.
And so.
So, but ultimately it
and then
happening.
Well, he ended up leaving his wife for my ex.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So he was in a marriage and he had 2 kids and now,
so
they're believing that they're supposed to be together and then working through that.
So did she leave then for him? Like, was she like, I'm not trying anymore? Or he left his wife, but she kept trying with you? Like,
they both ended up pursuing each other in the end. Yeah. And now there was a period where she said, I want to get back together with me, which was
like after this man. Oh,
so
goodness.
I said, okay. And now obviously reserved, but I had sensed in her to have that kind of open heart.
And are you guys living separately at this point?
We were for a period.
Okay.
And then we got back together. Okay. Throughout the journey, it was like back and forth, playing, don't play games with my heart.
Kind of stuff. Backstreet Boys.
And, and I don't want to say like a lot of negative things about her as a person, but I'd say the decisions that were being made, horrible decisions.
So hurtful.
Because hurtful, dividing a family, going after another guy that's not your husband, who's already married. Like all of this stuff is not cool.
Your kids, like if she had left the house at some point, they must be getting looped into like something's changed here, something's off with mom and dad.
Yeah, so when she said, okay, I want to completely separate, I said, you're going to be telling the kids because
it's your decision.
Yeah. And she wanted to also, she says, I want the kids I want to split them up. But I said, listen, this is your decision. I'm not going to be robbed of being their full-time parent because of your decisions.
Yeah.
And I knew how tough it would be in this society because the men often don't end up with the kids.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other testimony. I never wanted her to be without them.
But she's choosing to leave.
Yeah.
She can be with them if she stays.
Yeah.
Right?
So, it ended up that I was awarded all 4, was able to have them full time.
Nowadays, for sure.
And liberal visitation, shared custody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, you weren't against her seeing them, but you wanted them to stay in their home. Yeah. And that's their home. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So, and actually I was still letting her in the house, to hang out with the kids, and she would come over and make meals, and I was doing it for the kids. I said to the guy, well, let's do coffee. And so
Alan?
I know, I'm telling you, he is a good one.
I didn't realize we should have brought like a little trophy for Alan. Yeah. Like, you're a great human.
I give all the glory to God.
Wow.
Like, really,
you
without
had coffee with
he's
him.
too
Okay,
kind.
good for you.
And but it wasn't
for you.
to
And
say.
he's engaged
not
to
for everyone.
your wife at this point, your ex-wife. He's
Yes.
engaged, and you're just gonna have coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like, you know what? You're going to do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I don't support what you guys are doing. I think it's completely wrong.
Wow.
What you did. Am I going to sit here and bless it? No. But I release you.
Yeah.
I forgive
You
you.
don't want to be the flower boy and throw flowers down the aisle?
But I told him, I just said, I
good for
forgive
you.
you. And, I just, if this is what you're going to do, make it work.
Right, because now that's getting put in your kid's life too.
That's right.
Like that's now, if they're getting married,
Yeah.
then that's a whole nother, so that's hard even as a dad to be like, oh.
There was that dynamic too. And even when my kids found out that they were together, while I was still fighting for the marriage at the time, it was hard, and when they found out about the fact that we were going to be splitting up or separated, I just remember little Eden at the time, she might have been 5. She was like, you guys are going to break it. Like, just the fear and the crying. I thought, oh, how could this be?
Yeah.
And then, my boys all had their ways of dealing with it. I think they acted out. There was fighting and anger, different things like that. And so
when you said that the other episode, like all that comes from fear. Like fear is the root of like all this like anger and rebellion and stuff. It always usually is like, I thought that was so good when you said that. So that could be for the kids.
Yeah, and that was another journey too, right? Where they ended up getting counseling too.
Parenting your kids,
and then parenting them through that while trying to continually get myself well.
Yeah.
But it had been a number of years since the first I'm out kind of thing. Yeah. So I, by the grace of God, I felt pretty strong. I felt like I have a lot of still hope about life.
Yeah.
Am I sad and discouraged at times about this situation? Absolutely. Still saying, God, this is not the legacy that I wanted. And I was holding on to marriage so tightly. Not that it's a bad thing, but I needed to let that go and truly surrender everything. I said I was surrendering it, but I was still holding on to it because I made vows, I will never divorce.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that point you had done so much. Like, we can all see that Alan is a kind, like, glass full, like, he's always finding the sunny side. He's always finding the positive side. Even the midst of all that chaos and darkness, son, almost dying, dad dying, wife, multiple affairs. He's still like...
He's at Starbucks with the other guy, but like, what are you going through right now?
Like, tell me yourself.
Then he's having coffee with the other guy. He's just...
Amazing.
It was like, by the grace of God, obviously trying to look... Like, remember that we're all broken, and even go to your enemies or people that present as,
But that's hard to do, Alan. Like, it's like we all know it, but that's really hard to do.
It is.
Amazing that you were able to do that, because that's one thing to say it and to know it, but to be able to actually walk that out, it's really tough.
Yeah.
Yep. So through that journey, I would say everything that I learned through it, I wouldn't trade the lessons and the character building that God did me in that for anything in the world. Like, would I have chosen the method? No, it was hell.
Yeah.
Absolute. Like, there were certainly good moments, but it was very trying and challenging. And when you're going through a lot of hardship, you don't feel like you can be the best version of yourself.
No, you don't.
Can I really be the best dad? Or can I be really the best mom?
Other episodes, just that guilt and how...
The best friend.
Or the best friend. Or can I be the best employer?
There again.
At times my bosses were saying, Alan, like during the heart, like they were very caring, but get your A game on. Come on, get your A game on. Get in the game. And I was like, I want to, because they knew what I'm capable of, but my mind, I was just, especially in the heat of it.
Because you all have capacity. Like there's literally only so much that you can manage at one time, right?
And to that, people around who'd been journeying, friends and pastors on that journey did say, any one of those things, I don't know how I'd handle.
Totally.
And you're dealing with all of these. How are you doing it? In the middle of it, it was like, God, obviously. God.
Yeah.
That's the only way, and I'm in it, and I have no choice. I have to deal with it. You know, I have to confront it, and so, you know, thank God for what He did throughout everything, and that, you know, thank God, you know, my kids turned out okay through it. Obviously, they're all still on a journey. You know, we're all still on a journey, right? And
so then, did your ex end up marrying this other man, and then they just started another life?
They started another life. You know, my ex was trying to give me advice about maybe, you know, not getting together with Leah.
Of course she was. She was probably like, shoot, I've lost him.
Oh yeah, that's for the next episode.
That's for the next episode. So cliffhanger on that. No, anyway.
Seriously.
So no, but
she got married.
But yeah, she got married. They got together.
Thanks for your concern. However,
and so the dynamics of the pickups and everything. So there was that too, and it's like, okay,
because now you're co-parenting with them and him.
Right.
And
that was
hard. So but also they were very
adversarial.
Yes, and
Difficult.
very messy. Like they were also off again, on again, off again, on again, off again, on again.
So they didn't
they were
just get
together.
the happy ending they were pursuing. Yeah.
And I had people
they're now divorced.
Yeah. The statistics, right? Statistically, that will happen.
Or getting a divorce. I mean, they're at that process, right? Or maybe
separated for years.
Yeah. So and you know, in like, how can you build something on shaky ground, right? So, but you can't have an affair, go to somebody else and expect to have a successful marriage.
When that has like a root of deception and sneakiness.
And there was a lot of that. I mean, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah, right.
Really, like lots of lies, deception, you know, the short of it where the, you know, I discovered the Facebook conversations between my ex and this other guy. He had accountability with his then wife. They had each other's passwords, and it was a fake profile that he created so that he could communicate it.
Lie
you know,
after lie.
so it's like, and I, you know, God love him, but
God love him,
right? Yeah. It was
God love him.
It was all of that, you know, dealing with deception, dealing with betrayal, dealing with hurt, all of that, and obviously. At the end of the day, you know, throughout all that, just seeing how faithful God was through all of that, from you know, through everything. Right? Like we can't control anybody else, nor should we, but we can manage our own responses, work on ourselves, and maybe the other person will turn around, maybe not. And if they don't, we're gonna still be okay. Right?
If they
don't, God will give you your own Barbie doll, live Barbie.
Look
like, here you go.
Right.
This is for you, Alan, for all of your kindness.
Yeah, Alan.
I mean,
so the sunny side for you, though, in all this, is there is life after divorce. Like you were able to just build a beautiful life, not perfect. We talked about this. Nothing's perfect, but like you, God gives you a
episode on blending families. We'll show you that it's
So.
difficult.
But the key thing, you know, like if there's any advice and things that I've learned is you don't give up. You keep fighting for what you know is right, what God would want, but you do surrender and let go. And so in that prayer, I surrendered, let her go, and I felt a release, and I felt like I could move forward with my life. Like, you know,
that's what you needed to do.
Yeah. It was like, okay, the past behind, you know, and now pressing on towards what is ahead. Not that
little did he know what was ahead with me.
Things will still come up right from the past that you still, that's come up.
Ball.
I got to deal with this. I got to do it. Right. And that's for that discussion about, you know, when you blend, there's things that you thought you were healed of too that come up. But
wow, this has been a fun journey.
It has hopefully good times. And,
and that's great.
Yeah. So
you've been through quite a story. I didn't even realize all the complexities, like the medical. Like that's, you've been through a lot, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to be back next week in our next episode about
hopefully.
co-parenting.
We got to see how this edits of this video goes. And then if he does well,
I've created a lot of work for you. So
if you see an empty chair, he didn't pass Leah's test.
He didn't make the cut.
But genuinely, thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable. Sometimes it's hard to talk about all that stuff, but I know it'll resonate with somebody. So we really appreciate that.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, babe. Appreciate it.
We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.